Welcome to our /entitled people, where an entitled Karen trespasses on a family's property. Our next Reddit post is from Stanatomist. Hi, so this is my first time posting here, but for a little bit of background, my mother has been an entitled bee to my entire family since we were kids. She has done so much to us it is hard to even know where to start, such as putting bills into our names before we were even 16, fucking up all of our credit, demanding money from us all the time, most recently demanding money from me prior to my wedding last year for her to have a vehicle, or else she wouldn't allow my father, true, or brother, false as he says he could have found a way there himself, to come, claiming that my brothers have stolen things from them, having my father steal from us and forge my name on a paycheck so they can get money, claiming my 8-year-old nephew, at the time, beat her and my dad, and so on. My mom's always had a knack for being able to manipulate me by using my dad's well-being against me, saying he won't have pain meds so she can get money, saying he will have to walk for miles with his painful spinal injuries, etc., by comparing me to my brothers, claiming they won't help her, and crying to me, etc. Most recently, however, and the final straw for me, was that last year my wife's family, generously, offered to have her use their family cottage for a week, during which time my parents ended up royally pissing off the neighbors by not cleaning up their dog ass, taking out a boat only for my dad to pass out on one of their docks and having the boat slam into it, according to the neighbors, trying to start a fire under the cottage's porch, being rude and obnoxious, etc. Well, after that my wife's grandmother, who owns the cottage, told them that they could only go up to the cottage if someone in their family went with them, me and my wife, or someone else. They said fine, but then that grandmother died last year and my wife's mother and uncle inherited it. So in the middle of spring my mom tried to find out if they can go up for a week, and we tell her that we can't take time off for a while to go up with her. She turned around and said that she thought that we didn't need to go up with them anymore as the grandmother was dead. Anyways, after telling them that's not how that works, the rules are still in place, she said okay and eventually hung up. Skip forward a few weeks and she calls again asking if we could plan a weekend where we could all go up together, and me and my wife say sure, we just have to work it out with our jobs and with my wife's parents. They thought that they could just go up anytime we were all free though, because they asked why we had to ask her parents, again not my wife's or my property. In addition, by the end of the conversation it was clear that she also thought that she could bend the rules previously mentioned by having us up there for the start of the trip and finish off a week with just them there. I confronted her on this and she said well, we would feel like we were being babysat if you guys had to come with us the entire time. At this point I'm just thinking you would be being babysat by us, as that's the point. You've proven to my wife's family that you all need to be under supervision there, and are lucky that they will allow you back at all. After she hangs up though, I think it's been resolved, until a couple days later when she texts me asking for my wife's mother's number so she can talk about the restrictions and such, which upset my wife because she was already being rude to us about everything, and so my wife did not want to give my mother her parents' phone number for her to harass them, nor should she have to. Shortly after we went to the movies only for my mother to send me a text saying we can't get Hannah's mom's number. WTF have you been saying to them about us? My wife, trying not to cause more conflict, then sent them a message saying she would have her mother call them to talk. Well, this further devolved that night into us saying F all the niceties as my mother started texting me replies like we should have never had kids and I should have thrown myself down the stairs when I was pregnant with you. So after the accusatory message saying WTF, are we telling my wife's family about them? I haven't responded at all and have blocked their number. My wife stopped talking to them after the final message of her saying she would have her mom call mine. It amazes me when I and others have to deal with family members abusing their relationship to family members to be able to get them to do something, and even more when they use their relationship to that family member to manipulate a third party like one of their friends, or in this case a kind of fourth party like my wife's mother. I mean, who the F thinks that they are entitled to their children's wife's family's property? I shouldn't be as surprised as I am though, after all she used to hit my friends up for money and rides in high school and college. I will say though that things have been a lot less stressful since my mother has been out of the picture for us, and things between my brother's families and I have never been better. Sucks for her though, as I was the last one out of her 4 sons that wanted anything to do with them. TLD, her mother believes she has the right to use my wife's family cottage without restrictions, whenever she feels like it, even though she FD up the place last time she was there. Ends up costing her our relationship. Our next Reddit post is from Verity Welsh. Here's the story. My grandma, 70s, is always in the living room. She had lower spine surgery nearly a year ago and the recovery period should have been around 6 to 8 months. It's been nearly 12. Because of pain in her back in the beginning, she was unable to lay down in her bed in the room we prepared for her stay. So she claimed my dad's recliner and sleeps on it every night. A few months ago her doctor told her that she had recovered enough to where she could drive, and by this point she should be able to walk mostly without her walker, which he had told was only ever to help her maintain her balance. She wasn't supposed to put all her weight on it. Yet because she uses her pain as an excuse to not do anything, even walk, she has bed sores from sitting all the time. We've tried to take her on walks and have her exercise with us to build up her strength, but she will not bring up these things on her own. It's like we have to force her to take care of herself. She has become completely dependent on us despite being independent beforehand. There are many issues, but one that we deal with on a daily basis are her phone calls. The living room is supposed to be a place where we can all hang out, talk, watch things together, etc. But everything has to abruptly halt when she gets a call. It doesn't matter if we're watching a movie together or having an important discussion. Her calls always take priority. Even though we know she can walk, she will take the calls where she is. We all have to stop whatever it is we're doing because it's rude to talk during someone's call. But she can take several calls a day, chatting and laughing loudly while we sit in silence. She never asks if she can take a call or if we wouldn't mind or if we could be quiet for a few minutes. She just answers. I understand that she used to live alone, but she's a guest here. She never takes our perspectives on this into consideration because of how stubborn she is. Thankfully she's moving back to her house in a few weeks, so it'll be on her own shoulders if she wants to improve her health and habits. Our next Reddit post is from IcyLog2. First time poster here. Gonna be a bit long, sorry. I wanted to share some stories from my time working in the bakery at a grocery store. For context, this store is kinda more expensive, and really has that the customer is always right attitude to the extreme. So the customers know that they can tell us we're wrong, and complain about everything. As a lot of stores do, we made custom cakes. You can come into the store or call and place an order for whatever you want, as long as we have the stuff to make it. So our Karen had come in, and wanted a banana cream pie for her anniversary. This isn't something we make, but our head manager was very nice and worked personally with her to write an order for a cake with cream on top, pretty close to what she wanted. I wasn't working on the day she ordered it, and my manager wasn't working on the day of pickup. So fast forward to pickup day. It's slow, and we haven't had anyone come to get an order in a few hours. It's just me and one coworker, we'll call her Mary. Mary is the sweetest 4'8" old lady ever, teaches first graders, and I love her to death. A man comes up to the counter and asks us, do you have banana cream pies? We tell him no, we don't carry those, and he walks away. 45 minutes later the phone rings. And at this point, we still haven't had anyone else come for an order. I have social anxiety, and two of the hardest things for me are phone calls and confrontation with strangers. So lucky me for answering the phone. I pick up, and it's Karen. Already fuming. I placed an order for a pie for my anniversary weeks ago, and my husband just came home and said you don't have IT. I'm super confused, as no one's came for an order in over 3 hours. And there's no pie in the cooler at all. I'm sorry ma'am, is there any chance the order was placed at a different store? It happens quite often as there's many in the area. No, I'm not stupid. I live across the street and order from you every year. Now where's my pie? This is unacceptable. I tell her to hold on a minute, and I go check the cooler again. Still no pie. She starts screaming again, and I finally get her to tell me the name in the order. Usually we ask that first, but I couldn't get her to shut up. And surprise, there's a cake in there with her name on it. I finally get to hang up after she says she'll be right there to get it. Karen was not lying about living across the street, because not even 5 minutes later I look up and there's a red-faced, middle-aged woman speed walking over to us. Even from 50 feet away, I can tell she's pissed off. I must have had a look of absolute despair on my face, because Mary tells me to go to the back and she'll handle it. I can't remember the exact exchange they had, but it was pretty colorful. Mary was a pro though, you could tell she deals with rowdy kids all day. She tried once or twice to explain what had happened, but Karen wouldn't hear any of it. So she gave up, and Karen snatched her cake pie and trotted off to the checkout. Thankfully, I never had to deal with her again. I wish I could remember the full exchange they had, but this was few years ago. Thank God I don't work there anymore. Our next Reddit post is from DeFoxtrot86. This just happened about an hour ago. I was just cooking some chicken for lunch on my George Foreman grill when my mother came knocking on my front door. She told me my aunt just caught a woman trespassing on her property. When confronted, the woman held out her phone and claimed she was using her GPS to come and see the waterfall. We have no waterfalls in our area and she was not on any road for a GPS to work on. So BS was called on that. This woman walked down a driveway that was over a quarter-mile long, past my parents' house, my grandparents' house, and then went down to my aunt and uncle's house. What's more, we have no trespassing signs everywhere. But she blatantly ignored them. We then caught the woman as she was walking back up the driveway. My mother tore into her and called her out. And my stepfather had his double-barreled shotgun and told her not to come back. But this Karen nonchalantly brushed us off and tried to play ignorant the whole time. Then my aunt came driving up and we practically had her surrounded in every direction but the road. So she walked up the road and turned onto a nearby street. My roommate and I both recognized her as a woman we saw walking along the road recently. We live out in the hills in Oregon country. You don't usually see people walking along our street as the nearest sidewalk is like 8 miles away. So most people out here drive. We're all of the theory this woman may have been scouting out our property because we've had thieves and drug addicts in the area do that before. And a few years ago some trespassers vandalized our property. There is even a literal marijuana farm next door. So right now we're on guard in case she or anyone trespasses looking for anything to steal later. Edit, I would like to point out that it was not my idea at all for my stepfather to brandish a shotgun at the lady. But he never actually pointed it at her and just held it the entire time. The rest of us were completely unarmed and only wanted to tell her off before she left. But my stepfather came out with his double-barreled shotgun and then did all that. I don't really care for meaninglessly brandishing of a firearm. However, we have patrolled with them in the past when looting was going on in our area. Also, I seem to have worded the thing about the GPS wrongly. However, there are no waterfalls for like 15 miles in any direction of where I live. So there's no way that's what she was looking for. We believe she was possibly taking pictures or recording a video of the area. Small update, my sister has been asking around and the lady who trespassed on our property has been spotted around the neighborhood and has some people keeping a close eye on her. But thus far no one knows who she is or where she lives. Our next Reddit post is from _. Context, I work for a big chain grocery store mainly as the self-checkout cashier. We are required to greet and thank every customer we have contact with, regardless of the situation. To start off the story of my very fun encounter with a wild Karen, I would like to reiterate that I was no longer on the clock. My store was no longer paying me to be subservient to a bunch of assholes. That being said, I was in line at self-checkout to buy myself some lunch before I went home for the day. There's a pretty long line for the one normal register we have open, as well as the self-checkout line. The person who relieved me was busy with another customer and honestly didn't seem to be in the right headspace to get screamed at. So when I heard Karen set off the scale warning calling for an attendant's help and throw her bag of peppermint candy on the scale, I jumped in to help get the lines flowing and this woman out of the store. As I'm typing in my information to pull up the attendant's menu, she very rudely asks why is there only one register open? I plainly inform her that people have been calling out and we're doing the best we can do with the few people we have. Obviously she has never worked a day in her life because she continues to slam her items around and yells at me, "Thanks so much for your courtesy." I ignore her and walk away to the open terminal next to her to buy my lunch so I can finally leave. As I'm scanning my items, she comes to my terminal, gets in my space to try and read my name tag which is on the opposite side of where she's decided she can be. I put my items down and look her dead in the eye with a shit-eating grin and a sickly sweet customer service voice say, "My name is _ you have an excellent day." This apparently set her off because she storms away screaming, "Thank you so much for your courtesy and I'll remember your name, little girl." I finish scanning my items and walk up to the store's bookkeeper who was about 10 feet away from Karen and I. Before I could even open my mouth, she tells me, "I got you." I guess that's not too bad for the first ever complaint filed against me. I sure wish my life is as easy as hers. Having to scan and bag your own groceries seems like a dream problem to have. Our next Reddit post is from Bay_mess. I'm on mobile, so please forgive any errors. This is my father's story, and it took place about 10 years ago. My father works in an industry that is involved in building, but he isn't a contractor. I'm not going to specify, because he would be too easy to find. He was out at a new site in a small town on the Maine coast. The town is a typical, small fishing and lobstering village. It is also a well-known destination for tourists. The town survives on fishing and lobstering all year around, and tourism during the summer. While he was working, a woman wandered over from her very large, very expensive house next door to say hello. They got to chatting, and the woman, entitled tourist/ET, who only lives in Maine 3 months out of the year, started complaining to my dad about the fishing and lobstering boats starting up at 4 a.m. every morning and going by her house and waking her up. Most of these boats have old diesel engines, and they are loud. She informs my father that she has complained to the town clerk about the noise and wants to ban fishermen and lobstermen from starting their motors before 8 a.m. Needless to say, this didn't set well with my father, but being a polite and considerate man, he told her that these men and women often go far out to sea to pull their traps, and so they have to get up very early. Some also have secondary afternoon jobs, so going out early is their best option. This is their livelihood, and going out later would negatively impact the local economy. She was miffed and told my father that not only was she going to propose the ban at the next town meeting, but she had the money to ensure the ban would be enacted. My father chuckled and shook his head, told her it was a waste of time. Her reply, "We will just see about that." Obviously, the ban was never enacted, and she sold her house/summer home a couple years later. I'm told she was fairly well hated in the area because of her complete disregard of the town's main livelihood, and apparently after this incident, certain fishermen and lobstermen would gun their engines hard past her house early in the morning. She really thought her sleep was more important than an entire town's livelihood. Our next Reddit post is from Word Problem Apologist. Disclaimer, I was not here for this conversation, and don't have any direct dialogue. It's 3rd-hand, but I trust the sources. Also, considering the entitled one is only parent to like 5 cats, I'm just posting it here. My grandma is old. Not 90 plus old, but she's on painkillers almost all the time and she can barely walk. She's also the sweetest goddamn old lady I know. She's raised or helped raise more than a dozen kids, considering she gave birth to 9 of them and was a free babysitter for me, my sister, and most of my cousins. Even if she wasn't those things, we would still care for her because she's our grandmother and we love her. My mom and my Aunt Em have basically been some of the only ones actually doing anything for her, which is annoying, considering there's 7 other siblings who can. Maybe 6, I'm not sure about my Aunt B. For most of them, it's, well, excusable. Most live an hour or so away. One of my uncles is working on moving, one is across the country, but they at least try to help and do what they can. The exception to this is my Aunt Kay. Along with living near enough to reasonably drive over every once in a while, she's a hairdresser, and my grandparents surprisingly have hair, but that's not too important here. There's genuinely no reason she can't do anything to help, but despite my mom and her siblings consistently asking other family members to pitch in, she doesn't do anything. Last I heard, she still charges them for a haircut. I get that it's her job, but my aunt is a nurse and my mom is a chef, they aren't charging shit. It came to a head today when Aunt M visited Grandma to check up on them and found her, crying, on the phone with Aunt K. Aunt M and Mom both have kids that were frequently babysat by Grandma. Aunt K only has a herd of cats. Since Aunt M and Mom used Grandma more, they owe her more back. Because raising you alongside her 9 other kids in a loving home wasn't enough for you. I do recall Grandma saying that she did it out of love when responding, but unfortunately that's the extent of what I heard of the conversation. Hopefully it was easy to follow. I hope Grandma's knee surgery goes well. Thank you so much for watching these tales from Reddit. Consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video if you enjoyed. Also consider checking out one of our other videos.